Today's Keeping It Real is going to be all about the impact that you're creating
and how to own it.
and how to own it. That's right. And so there is, I was doing some coaching with just a terrific, pretty senior guy, and he got some feedback that he kind of needed to kind of continue to be, authentic and vulnerable. And he kind of needed to be out there and share more, of himself. And that kind of spurred a conversation between the two of us is how do you do that in an authentic way, you know? And one of the feedback pieces that he gets is that he's super quiet because he is a raging introvert. And so what happens is that he goes inside to kind of process this information, to process what's going on, and people start to make up what he's doing, what he's thinking, what he's not doing, what he's not thinking. And so we ended up getting into this huge conversation of how do you control that narrative.
How do you control the narrative? And I loved where you started, and be true to who you are,
That's
not
right.
who they want you to be.
That's right.
You tell this great story. It's in our book about another person that's more introverted, more quiet. And the feedback was, we love how thoughtful you are, but we want you to speak up more. And it's such a gap, they're like, the feedback is missing the point.
Yeah.
And it isn't really seeing the person for who they are. And so often, I think in our work, Kate, we end up unraveling the narrative of people trying to do and be who they think other people want them to be. And it's so disconnected from who they really are. Back to how do you find the vulnerable, real you and act and be from that place?
It's true. And so we got into this whole conversation, this client and I, about maybe what you just need to do is to say, hey, I'm a big introvert. Big shout out to Susan Cain. We love her work, Quiet, How to Be an Introvert in a World That Can't Stop Talking. One of my all-time favorite subtitles. and I recommended that book to him, but I also sort of said, maybe what you can do is start training those people to say, hey, I am a raging introvert, and this is what's going on for me. This is how I process information, and here's how we can be in relationship. How do you process information and actually have that conversation with the people around you? And that, in a way, helps to, you're being vulnerable, you're being more authentic, you're just showing people who you are and how you process information. And then it might look different on him than it does on some of the other people around.
Yeah, I love that invitation too, to say, here's how I do. Here's what's over here happening for me.
Mm.
So full permission to ask me questions or tap into this, and I can let you know if I'm ready or not.
Mm-hmm.
But also it lets your coachee say, and tell me how you think. Tell me what's happening over there for you. And suddenly you're starting to build greater connection. As you were saying that, I was coaching a newly appointed CHRO, a chief of people job, and they were about ready to onboard. And we talked about shared agreements and sitting down with the CEO and everybody else that's going to be part of her orbit and letting them know how she works. And I remember saying, oh my gosh, I'm such a big introvert. We're like, great, let's think about what are the things you need him to know about you, and what do you need to know about him, so the two of you can work really well together going
That's
forward.
right. And I think it's one of those things. That's what I love so much about Susan Cain's book, Quiet. I think culturally we tend to gravitate towards, we tend to reward those that are extroverts because they can think on their feet, they can spout out, it's easier to think that. But we're missing some really thoughtful discernment that I think is going on with introverts. And I think we all need to get better about how we work together with them. But in all three of these examples, yours, this client that I just talked to, the client that was in the book, it's about finding ways where you get to be who you are, with the people around you. Let them in. One of the places that client from long ago that's in the book is rather than just spouting out what you think, let them know what's your process. What questions are you thinking about? And you might get more minds wrapped around those questions.
Yeah.
But I think that sometimes when we get this feedback, we feel like we need to be someone else than we are. And that's not the answer. The
That's
answer
right.
is to go a little bit deeper and figure out, how do I be who I am and let people in on that, and then get curious about them. That's going to create a much more meaningful conversation.
To really have the impact you want to have, not the impact they want you to have. And as I say that, the feedback, if we're going to wrap up this up with some summary, in feedback, always look for at least the 2% truth,
Yes.
right? So in this case, the 2% truth in the client you were coaching, the one I was working with the other day, the 2% truth might be, I want to be in relationship with this person, but they don't understand who I am.
Yes.
That's really what was underneath, perhaps, the feedback.
That's
So
right.
look there and act from there. Don't take in the feedback and try to be someone you are not. That would be
That's
one takeaway I would have.
That's exactly right. And then the other one is that then you can start to control that narrative, because people will make up some things about you if you sit there quietly and don't say anything, right? So I love that. Like, look for that 2% truth. Now you're solving potentially the problem that you need to be solving, not actually solving something else that has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah. And I think my final takeaway would be, you own your brand in the workplace. You are constantly creating a wake that goes behind you. And if it's not what you want it to be, the only way you know about it is by listening to the feedback and then thinking, what do you adjust within yourself to be who you are in the truest expression, and have the impact out here with others that really matter to you.
It's in our book, Owning Your Impact. It's up to you.